The sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky in a fading glow of orange and crimson. Across the skeletal remains of what was once a bustling city, silence stretched thick, too thick for comfort. The streets, littered with abandoned cars and forgotten belongings, seemed to hold their breath. Somewhere deep within the shadows, the low moans of the undead began to rise, echoing faintly against the cracked walls of empty buildings. Night was falling over dead America, and with it came the longest battle its few remaining survivors would ever face. Among the scattered groups trying to survive, there was a small band gathered inside the crumbling remains of an old warehouse. They moved quietly, checking weapons, stacking supplies, and exchanging worried glances. This was not their first fight, but it was shaping up to be the hardest yet. Evelyn, the group's unofficial leader, stood near a broken window, her sharp eyes scanning the dimming streets outside. Her lean frame was tense, every muscle ready to spring into action. Her face, marked by dirt and exhaustion, revealed a strength forged from months of constant danger. Her voice was calm but firm as she addressed the others. "We don't know how many of them are out there, but it's more than we've seen in weeks," she said, her eyes flicking toward Marcus, the group's makeshift scout, who nodded grimly in reply. "They're moving fast, and they're hungry. We need to be ready before the darkness swallows us." Marcus wiped sweat from his brow. "I saw them moving through the park a few blocks east. They're gathering, more and more every hour. If we don't hold this spot, there's no telling what they'll do next." The group's youngest member, Jamie, barely more than a teenager, swallowed hard. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the wooden bat they had given him for protection. He had joined this fight not by choice but necessity, his family lost to the initial wave of the outbreak. Every night was a nightmare he fought to keep from overwhelming him. "We stay together," Evelyn continued. "We keep the fires burning and our eyes open. No one goes outside alone. Not until daylight. We have to survive the night." Outside, the air grew colder. The once familiar sounds of the city had all but vanished. Even the usual night birds were silent, as if nature itself had recoiled from the horror creeping through the streets. Suddenly, a faint noise broke the stillness, a low, guttural growl that grew louder by the second. Heads snapped toward the warehouse's entrances as the unmistakable shuffle of many feet approached. The dead were coming. Evelyn grabbed a makeshift spear, gripping it tightly. "Positions. Now." The survivors moved with practiced efficiency, forming a rough circle around the warehouse's main doors and windows. They had barricaded what they could, but the building's broken structure offered little protection from the relentless onslaught outside. Through the cracks and shattered glass, glowing eyes appeared in the growing darkness, advancing steadily. The stench of decay grew stronger, filling the air like a suffocating cloud. Jamie's voice quivered as he whispered, "They're here." The first wave crashed against their barricades, bodies relentless, their movements jerky but terrifyingly persistent. The survivors fought with everything they had, striking out with bats, knives, and whatever makeshift weapons they could wield. A sickening thud echoed as one of the undead smashed through a weakened wall panel, lunging toward Marcus. He swung his crowbar, connecting with a dull crack. The creature faltered, but more surged forward. The warehouse became a battlefield. Shouts, grunts, and the clatter of weapons filled the confined space. Every survivor fought not just for their lives but for the fragile hope that somewhere beyond the endless night, survival was still possible. Evelyn kept her focus sharp, ducking and striking with precision. She saw Jamie struggle and moved quickly to his side, pushing him back as another zombie lunged toward him. "Stay close. Don't freeze," she commanded. Minutes passed like hours as they battled wave after wave. Exhaustion tugged at their limbs, but retreat was not an option. Every moment they held the line was another moment gained, a chance to see the sun rise again. Finally, the groans began to fade. The undead withdrew into the shadows, regrouping for what felt like only a brief respite. Breathing heavily, the survivors looked around. Their faces were smeared with sweat and grime, their clothes torn, but none were down. Evelyn lowered her weapon, her voice steady. "This isn't over. It's just the beginning. They're getting stronger, smarter maybe. And they won't stop. Marcus cleaned his crowbar and nodded. We need better defenses, more supplies. If this is what we face every night, we won't last long without a plan. Jamie looked up at Evelyn, eyes wide. How do we keep going? How do we win? Evelyn's gaze hardened, filled with fierce determination. We fight. We survive. We prepare. Together. Outside, the city breathed its cold breath beneath the darkening sky. Somewhere beyond the broken streets, the undead were gathering, their numbers growing with every passing moment. As night fell over dead America, the survivors knew the battle ahead would stretch longer than any before, and the dawn might bring more horrors than they dared imagine. But they had no choice but to face it. Because if they didn't, the night would swallow what little hope was left. Let me know when you want me to continue with part 2. The hours after midnight were the hardest. Inside the battered warehouse, the survivors huddled together, the air heavy with tension. Evelyn paced near the flickering lantern they had salvaged from an old camping store. Its dim glow painted shaky shadows across the cracked walls, but it was the only light they dared use. Too much light, and they would draw more attention. Too little, and panic crept in like a slow poison. Marcus sat on an overturned crate, his eyes scanning the maps they had spread out across the dusty floor. We can't just sit here, Ev, he murmured, running a hand through his messy dark hair. They're regrouping out there. You know it. I saw them pull back to the alley, not scatter. Evelyn's jaw tightened. She knew Marcus was right. The undead weren't just wandering aimlessly tonight. They were moving like a pack, pressing, testing, waiting. She hated admitting it, but the zombies they faced now were different from the early days of the outbreak. Back then, they were slow, mindless, easy to avoid if you were fast. But these? These seemed organized. How many do you think are out there? Jamie's small voice cut through the tense quiet. He hugged his knees to his chest, sitting near the far wall. His wooden bat rested across his lap, and his eyes darted nervously toward the boarded-up window. Too many, Marcus muttered grimly. Evelyn crouched beside Jamie. We'll make it through this, she said quietly, her hand resting on his shoulder. But you need to stay strong. Can you do that for me? Jamie nodded, swallowing hard. His eyes shimmered with fear, but beneath it was the same stubborn determination Evelyn had seen the day they found him wandering alone on the highway. Suddenly, a sharp noise snapped everyone to attention, a metallic clang near the back door. Evelyn shot up, spear in hand. Positions, she whispered sharply. The survivors scrambled into place. Leah and Tomas, two of their strongest fighters, moved toward the rear, gripping their long blades tightly. Marcus grabbed his crowbar, and Jamie clenched his bat so tightly his knuckles turned white. The clang came again, louder this time. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. Could it be one of the undead? Or worse, another group of desperate survivors trying to break in? Either way, they couldn't risk lowering their guard. Hold, Evelyn whispered. We wait. For a few tense moments, the warehouse fell silent again, save for the survivors' quiet breathing. Then, bang! The back door shook violently, the makeshift barricade of crates and planks shuddering under a heavy blow. Groans rose outside, followed by the eerie scratching of fingernails against metal. They're here, Tomas hissed, eyes wide. Brace it! Evelyn ordered. Leah and Tomas rushed to reinforce the barricade just as another crash rattled the door. Evelyn moved swiftly, signaling Marcus to cover the side entrance. The warehouse had too many weak points, and they all knew it. They had survived this long by staying alert, but tonight, it felt like the entire city was closing in. Outside, the groans multiplied. Evelyn's stomach twisted. She peeked through a crack in the barricade, her breath catching in her throat. Dozens. Maybe more. The dead were crowding the alleyway, their pale faces twisted, mouths open in silent hunger. They shoved against each other, clawing at the door, pressing forward with a mindless drive. But something about the way they gathered, tight, coordinated, unsettled Evelyn. These aren't just random stragglers, she whispered to Marcus when he rushed back. They're moving like they know we're here. Marcus's brow furrowed. That's not possible. Evelyn shook her head. I don't care if it's possible. It's happening. The door gave another shuddering creak. Evelyn could see the barricade slipping under the relentless pressure. We need to buy time, Marcus said urgently. Evelyn scanned the room, her mind racing. They had no backup, no reinforcements, and nowhere to run, not yet. But maybe they could hold. Leah, Tomas, reinforce the door with anything heavy you can find, Evelyn ordered. Marcus, with me. We'll set up the fire traps near the side windows. If they breach, we make them burn for every inch. Jamie's voice shook as he asked, what can I do? Evelyn turned to him, eyes fierce but kind. Stay here. Watch our backs. If anything gets in, you swing. Don't hesitate. Jamie nodded, though his small hands trembled. They worked quickly, dragging metal shelves and crates, pouring out fuel they had stored for emergencies, and setting makeshift traps with rags and flammable liquids. The minutes ticked by in a haze of frantic motion. Outside, the groaning surged louder, the dead slamming into the warehouse with relentless force. Then, with a terrible crack, the barricade splintered. Now! Evelyn shouted. Marcus struck a match, tossing it onto the waiting fuel. Flames roared to life, spilling out toward the side entrance as the first of the undead poured inside. The battle for the night had truly begun. Let me know when you're ready for part 3. Flames danced across the warehouse floor, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The heat roared as the first wave of undead surged through the shattered door, their bodies catching fire as they stumbled forward, arms outstretched, jaws snapping. Evelyn swung her spear, striking a burning zombie clean across the chest. It toppled backward into the flames, but 3 more pushed past it. Marcus, left side, she barked. Marcus grunted, swinging his crowbar with both hands. He slammed it down on a zombie's skull, cracking bone with a sickening crunch. Another grabbed at his arm, but Tomas rushed in, slicing through its neck with a single, practiced sweep of his blade. Behind them, Jamie clung to his bat, wide-eyed as he watched the adults fight. The boy's breathing came in shallow gasps, and sweat beaded on his forehead. Stay back, Jamie! Evelyn called. Only if they break through. The fire traps were working, for now. But Evelyn knew they were temporary. The dead didn't care about burning flesh or searing pain, they just kept coming. Already, several had collapsed in the flames only to rise again, blackened and smoldering but still moving. The smell was overwhelming, charred skin, burning fabric, the thick, acrid scent of smoke. Evelyn coughed, wiping sweat from her brow, and glanced at Marcus. We need to fall back soon, she hissed. The fire's eating up the oxygen. Marcus nodded, panting. We can't hold this line much longer anyway. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the other side of the warehouse. Evelyn's stomach dropped. The side window, the one they hadn't reinforced enough. Tomas, she shouted. With me! They sprinted across the floor just as the first undead tumbled through the broken window, landing in a heap of glass and snarling limbs. Evelyn didn't hesitate, she lunged, driving her spear through its chest and kicking it backward. Tomas slashed beside her, his blade flashing in the firelight. But more were pouring in. Leah, cover Marcus! Evelyn yelled over the chaos. We need more time. Leah, gripping a heavy metal pipe, smashed it down onto the nearest undead head with a fierce cry. She moved to Marcus's side, the 2 of them covering the burning front entrance. Jamie edged back, eyes darting wildly. He could see undead bodies twisting in the flames, falling, then crawling, pushing over each other to reach the survivors. Jamie! Evelyn called sharply. Remember what I told you. Jamie gripped his bat tighter, his small face screwing up in determination. At the window, Tomas gave a sudden shout. They're climbing in faster now. Evelyn, we can't hold them. Evelyn's mind raced. They couldn't stay here, not like this. But running meant opening themselves up to even more danger outside. The streets were crawling with undead. Still, staying meant being overrun. She made the call. "Everyone, back to the loading bay," she shouted. "We regroup there and push out together." Marcus's eyes widened. "You're sure?" "We stay, we die," Evelyn barked. Without wasting another second, the survivors began pulling back. Marcus and Leah fought their way across the floor, shoving burning bodies aside. Evelyn and Tomas shoved crates over to momentarily block the window. "Jamie, with me." Evelyn grabbed the boy's hand, pulling him toward the back of the warehouse. The loading bay was their only shot. It opened to a narrow alleyway they had scouted earlier. If they moved fast, they might break through the outer line and find another shelter. The group burst into the loading bay, slamming the heavy interior door behind them. For a moment, they caught their breath, hearts hammering, lungs burning from smoke. Outside, the groaning was louder now, pressing in from all sides. "Evelyn," Marcus said grimly, "there's no way we can sneak through." She knew. She could hear it too, the shuffling, the scraping of feet on pavement, the soft but relentless hiss of hunger. But surrender wasn't an option. "Listen up," Evelyn said, voice steady despite the chaos. "We go out together, we move fast, and we don't stop. You see an opening, you take it. We keep each other covered. We survive." Tomas gave a sharp nod. Leah gripped her pipe tighter. Jamie swallowed hard, his small hands shaking, but he held his bat like a fighter. Marcus looked at Evelyn. "Ready?" She took a deep breath. "Ready." Together, they threw open the loading bay doors. The alley was packed, the dead swarmed like a tide, faces twisted, eyes gleaming in the faint moonlight. For a split second, the survivors froze. Then Evelyn let out a fierce battle cry. "Now!" They charged. The night exploded into chaos. Marcus swung his crowbar left and right, clearing a path as Tomas barreled forward with his blade. Leah stayed close behind, bashing skulls, shoving bodies aside. Evelyn gripped Jamie's hand tightly, dragging him through the narrowest gaps, her spear flashing. The undead howled, grasping, biting, clawing. The survivors fought tooth and nail, every inch forward a desperate struggle. The alley narrowed, then widened, the press of bodies shifting unpredictably. Evelyn's breath came in ragged gasps. They had to make it. They had to. Because as the night deepened over dead America, the longest battle of their lives was only just beginning. The night air hit Evelyn like a slap, sharp, cold, and filled with the rotting stench of the undead. She didn't stop. Her boots pounded the pavement as she yanked Jamie behind her, weaving through the narrow alley. Behind them, Marcus let out a furious roar, swinging his crowbar in brutal arcs. Each swing cracked bone and knocked zombies back, but they just kept coming. Leah was at his side, gritting her teeth, smashing her pipe into heads as the creatures lunged. "We can't hold this line much longer," Marcus bellowed. Tomas cut forward with his blade, slicing an opening toward the alley's far end. "We need to break through now." Evelyn's eyes darted ahead. At the end of the alley was a chain-link fence, its top coiled with rusted barbed wire. Beyond it, a crumbling stairway led up to an old apartment building's back entrance. That's it. That was their only shot. "Over the fence!" Evelyn shouted. "We make a stand inside." Jamie's face twisted with panic. "I can't, it's too high." Evelyn knelt quickly, cupping her hands. "Jamie, look at me, you can. I'll boost you. Go." The boy took a shaky breath and stepped into her hands. With a grunt, Evelyn lifted, pushing him up toward the fence. Jamie scrambled, fingers clutching at the metal links, boots scrabbling against the mesh. Behind them, the undead surged closer. Their snarling grew louder, their hands clawing at the narrow space the survivors had left. Marcus grunted, "I'll cover the back." He turned, swinging his crowbar with bone-breaking force, buying precious seconds. Leah was next up the fence, Tomas helping push her higher. She reached the top, wincing as the barbed wire scratched her arms, but she grit her teeth and swung a leg over. "Come on, Evelyn," Tomas urged. Evelyn shoved Tomas toward the fence. "You next, I'll cover." Tomas hesitated only a second before nodding. He sprinted up the fence, boots thudding against the links. Jamie was already at the top, trembling but determined as he slid down the other side. Evelyn turned back just in time to see a zombie lunging toward Marcus's back. Without thinking, she threw her spear, the tip punching clean through the creature's eye socket. Marcus grunted in thanks but didn't stop swinging. His arms were shaking, his breathing labored, but his determination hadn't faltered. "Go, Evelyn," he panted. Together, they backed toward the fence. Evelyn gripped the mesh, hauled herself up, scraping her arms as she climbed. She felt Marcus grab her boot, giving her an extra shove upward. Then he followed. The dead slammed into the fence just as Marcus swung his legs over, the whole structure rattling violently. Jamie screamed as the metal groaned and buckled, but the survivors dropped down on the far side, hitting the pavement hard. "Move!" Evelyn gasped, grabbing Jamie's hand again. They bolted up the cracked stone stairs, Tomas shoving the apartment door open with his shoulder. It splintered on the first try, swinging inward with a loud bang. Inside, the air was stale and dark, the only light coming from broken windows and the flicker of distant flames outside. The group stumbled inside, slamming the door behind them. Evelyn's chest heaved as she pressed her back to the wall, heart hammering in her ears. For a moment, no one spoke. They just breathed, harsh, shaking, desperate breaths. Jamie clung to Evelyn's side, trembling. Leah leaned against the wall, cradling her scraped arms. Tomas stood watch at the window, his blade still dripping with black ichor. Marcus sank to the floor, wiping sweat from his brow. "We need a plan," he muttered. "They're not stopping. They'll come through that fence eventually." Evelyn nodded grimly. She forced herself to stand straighter, pushing down the exhaustion clawing at her bones. "Let's check the building," she said. "If we're lucky, we'll find another exit, maybe something on the roof." Tomas turned from the window, his eyes sharp. "Or we'll find more trouble waiting inside." The apartment building was old and half-collapsed in places. The walls were cracked, the hallways littered with debris. But it was shelter, at least for now. They moved carefully, Evelyn leading with her spear, Marcus close behind with his crowbar. Jamie stayed sandwiched between Leah and Tomas, his wide eyes darting nervously around every corner. The building was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Halfway down the hall, Evelyn froze. She lifted her hand, signaling the group to stop. A sound, faint, but unmistakable. Footsteps. Not the shambling drag of the undead. But light, careful steps, human. Evelyn's heart raced. Another survivor? Or another threat? Marcus tightened his grip on his weapon. Leah's eyes narrowed. Tomas moved silently to cover Jamie, his blade raised. The footsteps grew closer. And then, a voice. "Hello," a young woman's voice called softly from the shadows. "Is someone there?" Evelyn's eyes met Marcus's. A new player had just entered the game. And in Dead America, trust was the most dangerous gamble of all. "Let me know when you want part 5. Evelyn's fingers tightened on her spear as the voice echoed softly down the ruined hallway. "Hello," the woman called again, her voice cautious but trembling. "Please, is anyone there?" Marcus stepped beside Evelyn, jaw tight. "It could be a trap," he murmured. "We can't risk it." But Evelyn's instincts told her otherwise. There was fear in that voice, raw, shaky fear. Not the confidence of a hunter. Not someone luring prey. "Stay with Jamie," Evelyn whispered to Tomas and Leah. Then she stepped forward, spear raised, her boots crunching softly over broken glass. As she rounded the corner, she saw her. A girl, maybe in her early 20s, crouched by a collapsed doorway. Her clothes were torn and filthy, her blonde hair a tangled mess. She clutched a long kitchen knife in shaking hands, her eyes wide as she spotted Evelyn. "Stay back," the girl gasped, lifting the knife. "I'm armed." Evelyn stopped, lowering her spear just slightly. "We don't want to hurt you," she said calmly. "Who are you?" The girl's lip trembled. "My name's Riley," she whispered. I was with a group. We got separated when the horde hit. I ran in here to hide. Please, don't leave me out here alone." Marcus appeared at Evelyn's side, his eyes hard. "She could be lying. Or she could be someone like us," Evelyn shot back quietly. Riley's shoulders sagged. "I swear, I'm not a threat. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Please," her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through every word. Evelyn made her decision. "Come with us," she said, offering a hand. "But stay close, and no sudden moves. We're just trying to survive the night, same as you." Riley hesitated only a heartbeat before shoving the knife into her belt and grabbing Evelyn's hand. They regrouped near the stairwell, where Tomas and Leah watched warily. Jamie peeked from behind Leah, his eyes full of mistrust. "Who's she?" he whispered. "A survivor," Evelyn said simply. Marcus crossed his arms. "We don't have time to babysit strays. We're stronger together," Evelyn shot back. "And we're not leaving anyone behind." Riley gave them a shaky nod. "Thank you." "Really?" But Tomas wasn't convinced. His eyes flicked to Evelyn. "We still need to find a way out. That fence won't hold the dead for long." Leah stepped closer to the window, peering into the dark street below. "If we can get to the roof," she murmured, "maybe we can cross over to the next building. Get away from the horde." Evelyn nodded. "Let's check upstairs." They moved cautiously, every creak of the floorboards making their hearts pound. Riley stayed close to Evelyn, whispering details about her old group, how they'd been ambushed, how they'd scattered, how she'd barely escaped. Upstairs, the building grew colder, the air heavy with dust and mold. The roof access door loomed ahead, rusted and partially ajar. But something was wrong. Evelyn felt it first, that shift in the air, the tension prickling her skin. Tomas moved ahead, blade ready. He reached the door, pushed it gently open. And froze. Outside, silhouetted against the starless night sky, a figure stood on the roof. It wasn't a zombie. It was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in patched survival gear, holding a rifle. His face was weathered, scarred. And his eyes were sharp and cold as they flicked to Tomas. More figures appeared from the shadows behind him, 5, maybe 6, all armed, all watching. "Easy," the leader said, his voice low and dangerous. "We're not here for a fight." Marcus stepped up beside Tomas, crowbar in hand. "Then why are you here?" The man gave a thin smile. "Because we saw you sneak in here. And we figured, if you're alive, maybe you've got supplies. Maybe you've got something worth trading." Evelyn felt her stomach twist. This was worse than zombies. Zombies were predictable. These were people, desperate, armed, and ready to do whatever it took to survive. "We don't want trouble," Evelyn called out carefully. "We're just trying to get clear of the horde." The man chuckled softly. "Yeah. So are we. But see, out here? It's not about what you want. It's about what you can hold on to." His hand twitched near the rifle. Jamie whimpered softly behind Evelyn. Leah shifted protectively closer. Tomas's grip tightened on his weapon. Evelyn's mind raced. They were cornered, undead pressing in from behind, armed strangers on the roof. Fighting was suicide. But surrender? That was just a slower death. Her eyes darted around the rooftop. There, to the left, a narrow metal ladder leading down to the next building. It was a gamble. But in dead America, gambles were all they had. Evelyn took a deep breath, heart pounding. "On my signal," she whispered to Marcus and Tomas. "Run. Let me know when you're ready for part 6, the escape attempt is about to explode into full chaos." Evelyn's heart hammered in her chest. The armed strangers watched, weapons loose in their hands but their eyes sharp. They weren't moving yet, sizing up the survivors, calculating risk, measuring what they could take and how easily. Evelyn knew that look. She'd seen it before, the hard, desperate look of people who had been stripped of everything and would now strip others to survive. "We need to move." "Now," Evelyn hissed to Marcus, Tomas, and Leah. "See the ladder?" Marcus's eyes flicked left. He gave the smallest of nods. Tomas gritted his teeth. "What about Jamie?" Evelyn's gaze darted to the boy, who was clinging to Leah's arm, wide-eyed and trembling. "I'll carry him," Leah whispered, tightening her grip protectively. But they only had one chance. One sudden move, and the strangers might open fire. Evelyn took a slow breath. "Marcus, make a distraction." Marcus's face split into a grin that wasn't entirely sane. "With pleasure." Before anyone could stop him, Marcus let out a loud shout. "Hey! Catch me if you can." He slammed his crowbar into a metal pipe, sending a deafening clang echoing across the rooftop. The strangers flinched, startled, and in that split second, Evelyn grabbed Tomas's arm. "Go!" They sprinted for the ladder. Leah scooped Jamie into her arms and ran, Tomas at her side, Evelyn bringing up the rear. The strangers roared in alarm. "Hey! Stop!" A shot cracked in the night. Concrete splintered by Evelyn's feet. Another bullet whined past, striking sparks off the ladder rail. Marcus whooped, drawing the gunman's attention as he dodged right, darting behind a rooftop vent. More shots rang out, chasing him, but he kept running, shouting insults and throwing metal scraps to make noise. "Come on, come on!" Evelyn urged as Leah scrambled down the ladder, clutching Jamie tight. Tomas followed fast, his boots clanging on the metal rungs. Evelyn glanced back, Marcus still darted through shadows, dodging shots, then she swung onto the ladder herself, heart hammering, praying Marcus could hold their attention. They hit the next rooftop hard, knees jarring. Leah stumbled, almost dropping Jamie, but Tomas caught her elbow. "We can't stop here." Evelyn gasped. "Keep moving." The roof stretched ahead, old tar paper, rusty vents, and a sagging ledge that overlooked a narrow alley. Tomas peered over the edge. "It's a drop, but we can make it." Leah shook her head. "With Jamie? He'll break something." Evelyn grabbed Tomas's shoulder. "Lower him down. You first, then help Leah." Tomas nodded grimly. He swung over the edge, lowering himself down carefully. Below, the alley was cracked concrete and debris, but clear of zombies, for now. Leah hugged Jamie tightly, murmuring to keep him calm. Evelyn helped lower him over the edge, Tomas reaching up from below to catch the boy. Leah followed next, trembling but determined. Evelyn was last. She swung down just as a bullet smashed into the rooftop behind her, sending shards of brick flying. She hit the ground with a painful thud but rolled quickly to her feet. "Run!" Together, they sprinted through the alley, ducking under dangling wires, weaving between burned-out cars and toppled trash bins. Behind them, Evelyn heard furious shouting. The strangers had realized they'd been tricked. And worse, from the far end of the alley, a low moaning rose. Tomas cursed. "They're coming!" The undead, drawn by the gunfire, were staggering into view, eyes gleaming in the dim light, jaws working hungrily. "We're trapped between them." Leah gasped. Evelyn scanned desperately, her eyes locking on a crumbling service door half hidden behind a dumpster. "There," she shouted. Tomas rushed forward, slamming his shoulder into the door. It groaned but didn't budge. Evelyn joined him, bracing her feet and pushing hard. Together, they shoved until the rusted latch gave way with a screech. "Inside!" Evelyn barked. They tumbled into a narrow hallway, the door slamming behind them. Tomas wedged a metal pipe through the handle, buying them precious seconds. Breathing hard, they looked around. It was dark, dusty, some kind of maintenance corridor, lined with old breaker boxes and peeling paint. but it was a path forward. "We keep moving," Evelyn said firmly. "No matter what." Leah cradled Jamie, who was quietly sobbing, into her shoulder. Tomas leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "Marcus," Evelyn whispered, heart clenching. He was still out there, alone, distracting the gunmen, facing the horde, giving them a chance. Tomas rested a hand on her arm. "We'll go back for him." Evelyn nodded slowly, though her chest felt heavy. They'd survive, they'd keep pushing forward, but they couldn't forget the people they left behind. Outside, the moans of the undead grew louder. Inside, Evelyn squared her shoulders. Dead America wanted them to break. But they weren't broken yet. "Let me know when you're ready for Part 7, the survivors will face even darker dangers in the next stretch." The hallway was tight, dim, and reeked of mold. Evelyn led the way, flashlight trembling in her hand. Its narrow beam danced over rusted pipes and cracked walls. Behind her, Leah carried Jamie close, whispering soft words to keep him calm, while Tomas kept to the rear, watching for any sign of pursuit. They all knew the truth, they were boxed in. Outside, the gunmen would be regrouping. Worse, the undead were likely closing in from the alleys and streets. There was no turning back. They had to go forward. Evelyn's flashlight caught something ahead, a stairwell leading down. A heavy steel door marked with faded yellow paint stood ajar. "Basement access," Tomas murmured. Leah hesitated. "You sure we want to go underground?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. "We don't have a choice." Tomas stepped past her, gripping the door's edge. "Let's make it quick." The stairwell was cold and silent. Every footstep echoed like a drumbeat. Jamie whimpered softly, burying his face against Leah's shoulder. At the bottom, they found themselves in a wide maintenance tunnel. Old wiring lined the ceiling, puddles glistened on the cracked cement floor. Faint graffiti marked the walls, names, dates, sometimes just frantic scratches, left by people who had probably never made it out. "We stay quiet, stay sharp," Evelyn whispered. "No noise." They moved carefully through the tunnel, listening. Occasionally, far away, they heard faint thumps, movement above, maybe the gunmen searching for them, maybe something worse. After a while, they came to a branching path. The left tunnel was collapsed, rubble blocking the way. The right descended deeper, the air growing colder. Leah shivered. "This feels wrong." Tomas gave her a grim smile. "Everything feels wrong nowadays." Evelyn took a breath and chose right. The tunnel sloped down, winding through the old infrastructure of the city. Occasionally they passed broken doors or rusted lockers, long looted. Evelyn's light flickered over old warning signs: danger, high voltage, authorized personnel only, evacuation route. All meaningless now. Suddenly, Evelyn froze. A sound echoed ahead, faint, wet, shuffling. She flicked off the flashlight. "Stop," she breathed. They pressed themselves against the damp wall, holding their breath. From the darkness ahead came the unmistakable scrape of dragging feet. Leah clutched Jamie tight. Tomas clenched his crowbar. Evelyn's heart pounded painfully as she strained to hear. Closer. Slow. Uneven. Evelyn raised her hand, counting silently. 1, 2. On 3, she flicked the light back on. The beam landed directly on a zombie's face, pale, twisted, its mouth hanging open. But it wasn't alone. Behind it, more figures loomed, dozens, packed tight in a narrow tunnel, their faces twitching as the sudden light hit them. Tomas swore under his breath. "Run." They spun on their heels and bolted. The tunnel echoed with snarls as the horde surged after them, rotten limbs clawing, feet scraping, jaws snapping. Leah ran desperately, Jamie clinging to her back, tears streaking his cheeks. Tomas stayed close, swinging his crowbar at any figure that lunged too near. Evelyn led, scanning wildly for an escape. Ahead, the tunnel split again, this time, a ladder led up into the ceiling, marked by a faded exit sign. "There!" Evelyn shouted. Tomas skidded to a halt beneath the hatch, slamming the crowbar against it until the rusted latch gave way. "Leah! Up first!" Evelyn ordered. Leah didn't hesitate. She shoved Jamie up, hands trembling, Tomas boosting him by the legs. Evelyn scrambled up next, grabbing the boy and pulling him through the hatch. Leah followed, gasping, then Tomas hauled himself up last, yanking the hatch shut just as the first clawed hands reached for them from below. They collapsed in a heap on the floor, panting, hearts racing. Slowly, they looked around. They were inside an abandoned train station. The vast, shadowy space stretched ahead, cracked tiles, toppled benches, shattered glass. A few old trains sat rusting on the tracks, long derailed. Above, the night sky peeked through the broken roof. Leah gave a shaky laugh. "We made it." Evelyn was about to answer when a voice cut through the dark. Well. She spun around, flashlight beam swinging. The gunmen. They were already here, 4 figures stepping out of the shadows, weapons raised, grim smiles on their faces. Tomas snarled. "You followed us." The lead man, tall and scarred, chuckled. "We're survivors too, friend. And you led us right to a safe spot. Be a shame if you didn't share it." Evelyn's stomach turned. They were cornered, again. But the night wasn't over yet. And as long as they kept fighting, it never would be. Ready for part 8? The battle inside the train station will push everyone to their limits. Let me know when to continue. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the scarred man's voice echoed across the derelict station. He stepped forward, weapon slung casually over his shoulder, his boots crunching on broken glass. 3 others followed, one wiry, one broad-shouldered, and one small but fast-looking, each armed and grinning. "Nice little hideout you found," Scarface said, eyes gleaming. "Perfect for the night." Evelyn raised her hands slowly. "We don't want trouble." Scarface smirked. "That's funny." "I do." Tomas shifted his weight, gripping his crowbar tighter. Leah eased Jamie behind a toppled bench, murmuring softly to keep him calm. Evelyn's mind raced. Outnumbered. Outgunned. Cornered. But they weren't giving up. Scarface lifted his rifle halfway. "Hand over your supplies, and maybe we let you walk away." Tomas laughed coldly. "You really believe that?" For a split second, the room was silent. Then Evelyn threw the flashlight. The beam arced wildly through the air, clattering to the floor and rolling into the shadows. In that moment of distraction, she dove behind a pillar, Tomas lunged left, and Leah yanked Jamie down behind the bench. Gunfire cracked, echoing off the walls. Tiles shattered. Dust filled the air. Tomas roared, charging low and swinging his crowbar. The wiry gunman yelped as Tomas slammed into him, sending them both crashing into a vending machine. Evelyn grabbed a broken chair leg, heart pounding, crawling towards Scarface from the side. Leah fumbled with a pocket knife, clutching Jamie close. Scarface spun, eyes narrowing. "I see you." But then... the moan. Low, guttural, chilling. From the far end of the station, shapes stirred. A horde, drawn by the noise. Zombies shuffled through the ruined entryways, their eyes locking onto the chaos. Scarface cursed, raising his rifle toward the undead. "No, no, no!" Evelyn lunged, slamming the chair leg into his ribs. He stumbled, gasping, gun slipping from his hands. Tomas pinned the wiry man, wrenching the crowbar from his grip. Leah darted out, grabbing Jamie's hand and pulling him toward a side door. "Go!" Evelyn shouted. They sprinted as the undead flooded the station. The broad-shouldered gunman screamed as rotten hands closed around him, dragging him down. Scarface scrambled for his weapon, but a snarling figure latched onto his arm, sinking teeth deep into flesh. His howl of rage turned into a wet, gurgling scream. Evelyn, Tomas, Leah, and Jamie burst through the side door, slamming it shut behind them. They collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath, listening as the sounds of gunfire and shrieks faded behind the thick metal door. Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut, willing her racing heart to slow. "Is everyone okay?" she croaked. "I got Jamie," Leah whispered. "We're here." Tomas leaned his forehead against the cold wall, letting out a shaky laugh. "We're alive. Again. For now." They stood in a narrow maintenance tunnel, dimly lit by emergency lights. The air smelled faintly of smoke and oil. "Where does this go?" Leah asked softly. Evelyn forced herself to stand. "Doesn't matter. We follow it." They moved quietly, their footsteps echoing in the narrow space. For the first time all night, Evelyn let herself hope, maybe they'd bought themselves a little time. Maybe they could find a better place to hide, to regroup, to figure out a plan. But halfway down the tunnel, Tomas stopped. "Do you hear that?" They fell silent. A faint, rhythmic thumping. Then, a voice. "Help! Please!" Evelyn's heart clenched. Leah's eyes widened. "Is that a kid?" Without waiting, Evelyn hurried forward, rounding a bend. There, trapped behind a chain-link gate, was a teenage boy, maybe 16, maybe 17, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. "They're coming," he shouted, pointing back. "Please, let me out." Evelyn grabbed at the rusted latch, Tomas helping. Together, they forced the gate open with a shriek of metal. The boy stumbled forward, sobbing. "Thank you. Thank you." Leah crouched beside him. "What's your name?" "Zach," he panted. "There's more behind me, we have to go." And then they saw them. Zombies. Dozens. Pouring down the tunnel, eyes locked on the living. Evelyn didn't think, she grabbed Zach's arm and ran. Leah pulled Jamie close. Tomas slammed the gate shut again, jamming the crowbar through the latch, buying precious seconds. They sprinted down the passage, lungs burning, hearts hammering. Behind them, the dead howled, battering at the gate, their hunger relentless. As they ran, Evelyn felt something sharp, a spark in her chest. Not just fear. Not just adrenaline. Something else. A determination. They were still alive. And as long as they kept fighting, they weren't done yet. Ready for part 9? The final 2 parts will push everything to the brink, betrayal, sacrifice, and the final stand of the survivors. Let me know when to continue. The narrow tunnel shook with the pounding of the undead against the metal gate. Evelyn gripped Zach's hand tightly, pulling him forward as they ran. Leah clutched Jamie to her chest, her face pale but determined. Tomas brought up the rear, his eyes darting back every few steps to check if the gate would hold. Their footsteps echoed through the dimly lit underground, where flickering lights created long, shifting shadows. "We can't keep running forever," Tomas muttered, panting. "We need somewhere to make a stand." "There has to be another exit," Evelyn said, forcing herself to stay focused. An emergency hatch, a ladder, anything. Zach, the teenager they'd rescued, stumbled slightly, but Evelyn tightened her grip. "Stay with me, Zach." He nodded quickly, his face streaked with tears and grime. "I'm okay. I can keep going." Jamie, wide-eyed but silent, nestled into Leah's arms. They rounded a corner, and Evelyn froze. A rusted ladder stretched upward, bolted to the wall, disappearing into darkness. Above, a faint shaft of moonlight filtered through a hatch. "There," she gasped. Tomas grinned. Finally, some luck. But luck was a fleeting thing. Behind them, the tortured screech of bending metal filled the tunnel, the gate was buckling under the sheer force of the horde. "Climb!" Evelyn shouted. Tomas boosted Leah up first, Jamie clinging to her back. Evelyn shoved Zach toward the ladder, watching anxiously as he scrambled up. She grabbed the rungs, heart hammering. Tomas waited below, crowbar ready, the last line of defense. With a final groan, the gate snapped. The dead poured through. Tomas swung wildly, smashing skulls, buying precious seconds. Evelyn reached the top, pushing at the hatch with all her strength. It wouldn't budge. "Help me," she cried. Zack joined her, shoulder to shoulder, pushing. Leah braced herself below them, holding Jamie tight. Below, Tomas roared, striking down another zombie, but they were too many, clawing, grabbing, dragging. With a desperate cry, Evelyn slammed her shoulder into the hatch. It gave way. Moonlight spilled in, cool night air rushing down. Evelyn scrambled out, yanking Zack up. Leah pushed Jamie through, then Tomas, bloodied, panting, eyes wild, hauled himself out last, slamming the hatch shut behind him. They collapsed onto the rooftop of a low-maintenance building, gasping for breath. Around them stretched the deserted outskirts of the city, silent streets, abandoned cars, and the distant glow of burning buildings. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The undead pounded against the hatch below, muffled but relentless. Finally, Tomas sat up. "We can't stay here. They'll find another way up." Evelyn forced herself to her feet, scanning the surroundings. "There's a warehouse across the lot. Maybe we can barricade inside, wait for dawn." Leah nodded tiredly, cradling Jamie. "We need to rest. Just for a little while." Zack wrapped his arms around himself, shivering. Do you think there are other survivors out there?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. She looked at Tomas, at Leah, at the little boy who had survived so much, and at the teenager they'd just saved. "I don't know," she said softly. "But we're still here. That has to count for something." They moved carefully across the rooftop, easing down a rusted fire escape, every creak of metal setting their nerves on edge. Reaching the ground, they slipped through the shadows toward the warehouse. Evelyn's heart clenched as she spotted the faint silhouette of someone moving inside. "Wait," Tomas whispered, holding up a hand. They crouched low, watching. Inside the warehouse, a small group of survivors worked quickly, barricading doors, setting up defenses. Evelyn's heart leapt. Maybe, just maybe, they'd found allies. But as they watched, a figure stepped out of the shadows, tall, confident, armed to the teeth. Scarface. The leader from the train station. Alive. His arm was bandaged, his face twisted in fury. Evelyn's stomach turned cold. "He made it out," Tomas muttered. "I thought." Scarface barked orders at his group, waving his weapon. Evelyn's mind raced. They couldn't walk up to him. They couldn't trust him. But they were running out of places to go. Leah touched Evelyn's arm gently. "What do we do?" Evelyn swallowed hard, her mind churning. They had two choices: confront Scarface and his group, and risk another deadly fight, or slip away, keep moving, and hope to find shelter elsewhere before sunrise. Neither option was good. But the night was growing colder, darker. And they were running out of time. Evelyn clenched her fists, feeling the weight of every decision pressing down on her. They were survivors. They had survived the longest night so far. But the battle was far from over. And as dawn crept closer, they knew the real fight was only just beginning. Want me to continue with the final part, part 10? It will bring everything to the climax, the final confrontation, sacrifices, and the last stand under the rising sun. Let me know. The first pale hints of dawn painted the sky as Evelyn crouched behind a rusted car, watching Scarface and his group fortify the warehouse. She could hear Tomas's quiet breathing beside her, Leah holding Jamie close, Zack huddled on the ground, shivering. "They're better armed than us," Tomas murmured. "If we go in, it's a gamble." Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind raced. They couldn't survive another night out in the open, not without shelter, food, or weapons. Leah touched Evelyn's arm. "We have to try." Evelyn opened her eyes. She could see it on Leah's face, the same raw fear, the same desperate hope. They were all out of options. Taking a slow breath, Evelyn rose slightly. "We'll approach carefully. Show we're not a threat. They might let us in." Tomas grunted, unconvinced. But he readied his crowbar anyway. They crept forward, staying low, making sure to stay visible but non-threatening. Evelyn raised her hands as they approached the warehouse entrance. "Hey," she called softly. "We're survivors. We're not here to fight." Weapons swung toward them instantly. Scarface stepped out, glaring, his face bruised and bandaged but unmistakably dangerous. "You," he snarled. "I remember you." Evelyn forced herself to stay calm. "We just want to stay for the day. We'll help defend the place if you let us." Scarface narrowed his eyes. "Why should I trust you?" Evelyn gestured to Leah, Jamie, and Zach. "Because we're human. And we're all running out of time." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then, with a sharp wave of his hand, Scarface growled, "Fine. But one wrong move, and you're out." They slipped inside. The warehouse was a fortress of crates, barrels, and makeshift barricades. Scarface's group eyed them warily as they settled in, tension thick in the air. Evelyn crouched beside Leah, checking Jamie's scraped knees. Zach sat cross-legged, hugging his arms. Tomas paced restlessly, glancing at the boarded windows. "Do you really think they'll let us stay?" Zach asked in a small voice. Evelyn managed a thin smile. "For now." But she could feel it, the unease, the mistrust. Scarface wasn't the kind of man to share resources easily. Outside, the undead gathered, drawn by the sound of voices, the smell of the living. The pounding on the doors began softly, then built into a steady drumbeat. Tomas cursed under his breath. "They're coming in force." Scarface barked orders, rallying his people. "Get ready. Reinforce the barricades." Evelyn pulled Tomas aside. "Listen, we need a backup plan. If they turn on us." Tomas nodded grimly. "We stay close. Protect Leah and the kids." The undead slammed into the barricades, snarling and clawing, their numbers swelling as the sun rose. The survivors fought hard, swinging makeshift weapons, pushing back, reinforcing the weak points. Evelyn and Tomas worked side by side, covering gaps, holding the line. But it wasn't enough. With a splintering crash, part of the barricade gave way. Zombies surged through. Evelyn grabbed a pipe, swinging furiously, adrenaline burning through her exhaustion. Tomas roared, smashing skulls with his crowbar. Leah shielded Jamie, shoving Zach behind her. Amid the chaos, Scarface fought like a wild animal, but his group was falling, one by one, under the relentless assault. Evelyn's arms burned. She slipped, stumbled, caught herself. "Evelyn!" Tomas shouted, grabbing her arm. They scrambled back toward Leah and the others, the undead flooding the warehouse. Scarface met Evelyn's gaze across the battlefield, his expression a mix of fury and grudging respect. He threw her a weapon, a short axe, before disappearing into the fray. Evelyn caught it, heart pounding. "Let's move." They pushed through the chaos, slipping out a side door into the blinding morning light. The undead followed, but the sun was rising fast, casting long shadows across the wreckage of the world. Evelyn looked back only once, seeing the warehouse consumed by the swarm. Scarface was gone, whether dead or still fighting, she couldn't tell. Breathless, they ran until they reached an open stretch of highway. For the first time in hours, the world was quiet. Evelyn sank to her knees, trembling. Leah knelt beside her, cradling Jamie, while Tomas dropped heavily to the ground, staring up at the sky. Zach sat quietly, tears sliding down his dirt-streaked face. They had survived the longest night. But as they looked ahead, at the endless road, the ruined cities, the uncertain future, they knew the battle wasn't over. It never would be. Evelyn wiped her eyes, forcing herself to stand. "We keep moving," she whispered. "We survive. We find others." Tomas nodded, slowly rising. Leah took Evelyn's hand, squeezing it tightly. Zach wiped his face and stood too. Together, they turned toward the horizon, the rising sun painting the world gold. A new day had come over dead America. And the survivors were still here, still fighting, still hoping. Because as long as they breathed, the dead hadn't won. Not yet. If you want, I can create a follow-up series or a spin-off story, maybe focusing on one of the characters or a new survivor group. Want me to? Let me know.